Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's presentation on risk management or foundations of internal auditing. In an increasingly complex and volatile business environment, effectively identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks has become a crucial aspect of an organization's success. Today, we will delve into the realms of risk management, exploring its important key principles and strategies that empower business to navigate uncertainty and drive sustainable growth. Are you ready to start? Grab your pen and pencils and let's get started. Now, if you are ready, let's get into it. Let's look into risk management process. First of all, before we start, let's look into what are the success tips in relation to risk management. Risk response is frequently tested risk management topic. Having a sound knowledge and understanding of risk response strategies will increase success in the exam. Let's look into the risk management process. First, we have identification of context. In terms of the identification of context, you have to identify context within risk should manage. Context include law regulation, capital project, business process, technology, and organization. And step 2 is a risk identification. At the risk identification, where we have to perform at every level entity, unit, division, identify context. And we have to look at the risk for the past and future events. And have to perform the SWOT analysis, which is to identify the strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threat. And also, we conduct the workshop to analyze or identify the risk in the risk identification. And step 3 is a risk assessment and prioritization, where you have to prioritize the risk. After you've done the risk assessment, you need to prioritize. So what are the process involved will be, in terms of the formal and informal, can be divided into 3 parts, which involve assess, event, likelihood, means managing risk. The likelihood is referring to how frequent the risk happen. Likelihood and impact is to prioritize risk and decision making. On top of that, you also have to look into the qualitative. Qualitative means that whether the risk is considered low, moderate, or high. And the method that we use for the risk assessment, it could be in a form of interview, survey, or quantitative methods like ranking, maps, and modeling. Step 4 is a risk response. And each organization select risk response which is aligned with the risk, which is risk appetite, level, organization, which is willing to accept the risk. And you have a control, is an action taken by the management to manage the risk in order to ensure the risk response are being carried out. You have a residual risk means that risk will be remain after response are executed. And you have a control risk, which is the control risk is categorized like fail to manage effectively. Step 5 is a risk monitoring. Once you already produce a risk response, and then you have to monitor the risk. The risk monitoring is a step 4, which is continuous process as illustrated in diagram A, where you have to track, identify risks, you have to evaluate the current risk response plan, and you need to monitor residual risk, and at the same time, you may need to identify new risks. And the two most important sources of information for ongoing assessment is manager operating unit and the audit function. Audit functions, the function is to analyze risk and to provide responses. Risk responses can be categorized into 4, which is acceptance, avoidance, pursuit, reductions, or sharing. Acceptance means that retention. Acceptance, no action is taken to alter severity of the risk, and is actually a self-assurance. Meanwhile, avoidance is the action taken to remove the risk. If no response would reduce the risk to acceptable level. Pursuit means action is taken to accept increase risk to improve performance without exceeding acceptable tolerance. Reductions mean mitigation. The action is taken to reduce severity of risk within residual profiles and risk appetite. And sharing means that you are transfer the actions take to reduce severity of risk by transfer a portion of risk to another party. Responsibility for aspect of organization risk management. We have several parties, which is board of directors, management, internal audit activity, and the chief audit executive. Let's look into what are the responsibility with regards to risk management for the boards. Board have an oversight function. However, board may delegate risk oversight to board committee, such as risk committee. And the risk committee have to determine the risk management processes whether it is in place, adequate, and effective. The functions of management in this scenario have to ensure the risk management processes are functioning. Management generally has day-to-day responsibility for managing performance and risk taken to achieve strategy and business objective. Meanwhile, internal audit activity may be directed to examine, evaluate, report, or recommend for the improvements. Has consulting role in identifying, evaluating, and implementing risk management methods and control. CAE, or Chief Audit Executive, must understand management and board expectation of IAA and risk management. This is codified in Charter of Internal Audit Activity and Board. If management has no formal risk management, CAE to discuss with the management and board their obligations for managing and monitoring risk. Let's look into the internal audit's role in risk management. According to the institute internal auditors issued the following interpretation to clarify internal audit rules. Interpretation of Standard 2120 stated that determine whether risk management processes effective is a judgment which is resulting from internal auditors' assessment that organizational objectives support and align with organizational mission. Significant risks identified and assessed, appropriate risk response are selected and aligned with the organization risk appetite, which is relevant risk information is captured, communicate timely manner to all staff across organization, management and board to carry out their responsibility. Internal audit activity may gather information to support the assessment during multiple engagement. Risk management processes are monitored through the ongoing activities. For the implementation standard 2120.A1 stated that internal audit activity must evaluate risk exposures relating to organizations, governance, operations, and information system. Achievement organization strategic objective in terms of the reliability and integrity of financial and operation information, effectiveness and efficiency of operation and program, safeguarding assets, compliance with the law, regulations, policy, procedures, and contracts. And in terms of the implementation standard 2120.A3, stated that internal audit activity must evaluate the potential for occurrence of fraud in terms of how organization manage fraud risk. In terms of the internal audit rules in risk management, let's look the function or the accountability for the CAE, internal auditors, and the internal audit activity. For the CAE, Chief Audit Executive, Implementation Standard 2120 stated that to put previous standard into practice, CAE should obtain clear understanding of the organizations in terms of the risk appetite, business mission and objectives, business strategy, risk identified by management may be financial or in terms of legal or regulatory or strategy. And also in terms of the current risk management environment, prior corrective action. Means of identify assess, overseeing, should speak to the board, senior management about risk appetite, tolerance, risk management. And CSE also may determine whether strategic objective align with the mission, vision, and risk appetite. In terms of the internal auditors' accountability or responsibility with regards to the risk management, based on the implementing standard 2120, stated that internal auditors, to put previous standard into practice, CAE should obtain clear understanding of the organization in terms of the risk appetite, business mission, objective risk identified by the management, current risk management, and so forth. An internal audit activity must alert management to new risks in terms of in case there is inadequate mitigating risk, and internal audit activities must provide recommendations and action plan for risk response. They have to evaluate risk management process, to perform its own risk assessment when discussion with the board, management, and permit alignment of recommendation risk response with the risk appetite. And internal audit activities also have to establish framework like COSO, as ISO 3100, used for risk identification. Have to ensure management of its risk, audit failure, false assurance, damage to reputation. And on top of that, internal audit activities also have to monitor all corrective action. Risk management considerations for consulting engagement. This implementation standard address the risk management responsibility of internal auditors when performing consulting engagement. Let's look into the implementation standard 2120.C1. It states that during consulting engagement, internal auditors must address risks consistent with the engagement objectives and alert existence of significant risks. For the implementation standard 2120.C2, it stated that internal auditors must incorporate knowledge of risks gained from consulting engagement into their evaluation organization's risk management process. For the implementation standard 2120.3C3, when assisting management in establishing improving risk management processes, internal auditors must refrain from assuming any management responsibility by actually managing risks. Let's look into the conformance with the standard 2120. Conformance with the standard 2120 stated that to demonstrate compliance, the internal audit charter and audit plans are relevant documents. Other relevant documents are minutes of meeting. Recommendations by the internal auditors were discussed with the board, senior management, task forces, committee. Internal audit assessment and action plans demonstrate evaluation and improvement. For the ISO 31000 risk management framework, it says that this is a principle-based and foundation approach to risk management. And the value creations are the purpose of risk management. The principles are described in the diagram on the right-hand side. So for this type of questions, what will be asked in the examination is the ISO 3100 risk management framework is frequently tested risk management topic. So you have to understand the value creations as stated in this principle. For the value creations, we have integrated risk management is the integrated into organizational objectives, and it is a structured and comprehensive, whereby risk management approach need to be structured and comprehensive. And in terms of the framework and processes, it should be customized to align with organizational objective. And in terms of the continual improvement, learning and experience is needed to improve risk management. In terms of the protections, we have human and cultural factors. We have human behavior and the cultural affect each level of risk management. We have how to cater in terms of the human and cultural factors. And also we have the best available information, like as a protections, they have to use that risk management, have to consider past, current, and future information and a limited of such information. And in terms of the dynamic risk management, foresee and recognize and react to changing of risk. Inclusive involvement of stakeholders enable to inform risk management. And in terms of ISO 3100 risk management framework, the board and senior management have to demonstrate leadership and commitment by implementing the framework and component through adopting policies, establish risk management plan and approach, committing resources, assigning accountability to the person in charge, authority, giving the authority responsibility for managing the risk. For the leadership and commitment, we have integration, where objective, structure, governance, culture, and dynamic process. We have the design, which is understanding, articulating, commitment, assign authority, responsibility, allocate resources, and communication. And then we have implementation, how to cater the risk management. So basically, implementation of the framework stated that developing in terms of the developing plan, identify decision-making process, modify decision-making, ensure stakeholders understand. In terms of the evaluations, so based on the risk management framework stated that you have to measure the performance against the expectation. And how to improve the risk management framework? The framework stated that improvement, in terms of the improvement, you have to monitor, update framework in responses to the changes. Let's look into the risk assessment. Risk assessment is a process of identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks. What do you have in the risk assessment? First, you have to identify the risk, which is you have to find the risk that can contribute or prevent you from achieving the organization objective. And then you have to analyze the risk in terms of you have to look into of the nature, the characteristic level of the risk, in terms of the likelihood of the event, consequences, control effectiveness, and the confidence level. After you have done the risk analysis, you have to perform risk evaluation. What did you do in the risk evaluation? You have to support decision-making, comparing defined risk criteria with the risk analysis outcome to determine the actions required. And once you did the risk evaluation, you have to treat the risk. So, how you treat the risk? You have to select the risk treatment. How you treat the risk, whether you want to accept the risk, or you want to avoid the risk, or you want to reduce the risk, or you want to share the risk, or you want to transfer the risk to another department. And after that, after the risk treatment, you have to monitor and review the risk. Should occur in all phases of the risk management in terms of the process to improve quality and effectiveness. And then finally, you have to record and you have to report. So the result should be communicated to the higher level in the organization. So if the higher management is the board, then you have to report to the board or the risk committee. So the result should be communicated, enhance communication with the stakeholder. If the risk need to be transferred or need to be avoided or need to be shared with the stakeholder, then you have to communicate with the stakeholder. Let's look into the risk management framework in terms of the assurance approaches. So in this slide, it's explained about 3 approaches to provide assurance on the risk management process. First, we have maturity model. Maturity models is actually, you have to determine the risk management process to curve and evaluate the maturity, whether it is in the category of progressing as expected, or the risk is actually add value to the organization, or the risk is actually meet organization needs. And in terms of the process, you have to evaluate whether the risk management element has been put in place. And then you have the key principle, which is you have to evaluate whether the risk management principles are in practice. And that's all for today. And if you find this video is helpful for your CIA examination preparation, make sure you click the subscribe button and bell notification so you will not miss any update from upcoming video from us. And be sure to comment down below what you have learned in today's lesson. Thank you very much for your listening.